Klein wakes up with his hands covered, a gun on the table, and a hole in his head. He's incredibly confused as vague memories begin flashing through his mind and the hole in his head begins to regenerate. He remembers his life as Cho Ming-ryu on Earth, but now he also has memories of someone else in his head, and it's all a jumbled mess. From what he can piece together, he is now in the body of a man named Klein Moretti, and he is an unemployed history major living in the city of Tianjin. He tries looking through Klein's journal to see if he can find any more clues about what happened, and from the entries, he discovers that Klein met up with a man named Welsh a month ago, and together, the two of them began deciphering an ancient book. The book apparently belonged to the Antigonos family, and even though Klein doesn't really know anything about them, he gets the feeling that they are pretty important. Klein continues reading the diary entries, and he spits a lot of important-sounding words like Black Emperor or the Tudor Kingdom, but he finds it strange that the journal entries just suddenly stop at one point. Although it makes a lot more sense when the gun is factored into the equation. Just then, the diary flips open to the final entry that was made before the original Klein's death, and it reads, "Everyone is going to die, including me." Seeing this convinces Klein that the original Klein had discovered a secret that ended up driving him to his death. But what could that secret have been? Just then, Klein's little sister knocks on the door to wake Klein up, and Klein can't let her see his blood-covered room. So he hurriedly closes the journal and covers the blood stains, but he still needs to figure out what to do with the gun. Melissa eventually enters, and she thinks it's weird that there are books stacked all over the floor, so she asks Klein if he spent the whole night reading again. Klein tells her he was just organizing his stuff a little, but he still has to hide the gun. So as soon as Melissa's back is turned, he drops the gun in his drawer. However, he did it a little clumsily, so Melissa heard the thud and asks what that sound was. Klein panics a bit and pulls a pocket watch out of the drawer as a cover, but then he notices that the watch is broken. So far, she hasn't been very affectionate towards Klein, but without saying a word, she takes the broken watch and begins repairing it for him, so she must care about him at least a bit. Once she's done, she goes back to brushing her teeth, and once she leaves, Klein starts wiping down all the blood in the room. His memories as Klein are still scattered, but whatever led him to shoot himself in the head must have had something to do with the ancient notebook. But Klein's death aside, he has to think about how he transmigrated here in the first place. Before coming to this world, he was Cho Ming-ryu, just an ordinary man who was absolutely failing at life. One day, he got sick of his circumstances, so he tried performing a good luck ritual he read about to make his life better. And somehow, he ended up here afterwards. A few minutes later, Melissa has gotten dressed for school, so she gives Klein a plate of bread and reminds him to go to the bakery today to pick up some more. She also says she'll make a special meal for him when she gets back since she knows he has been working hard to find a job. But Klein doesn't plan on sticking around that long. He still doesn't know much about this world, but he knows it's dangerous here. So he wants to try performing the luck ritual again to see if it will take him back to his original world. But first, he decides to head to the bakery to pick up the bread Melissa asked for. But while he's there, he gets an ominous feeling, almost as if someone is watching him. Once he is done buying the bread, he heads out into the city, and aside from the blood-red moon that appears at night, this place looks like a perfectly normal city. While walking, Klein notices a group of guys playing the landlord card game, and he is surprised since that game also existed in his original world. According to the history books, the game was invented in this world by Emperor Roswell Gustav 100 years ago, and among other things, he also invented tarot reading, steam engines, and sailboats, greatly advancing this world's technology. Knowing all this, Klein comes to the conclusion that Gustav must have been a transmigrator just like him. He is kind of relieved to know that he isn't the only transmigrator in this world, but that sense of relief is short-lived as he gets startled by a clown and reaches for his gun. In his defense, the clown does look really creepy, so it was a natural response, but then he gets the feeling that someone is watching him again. So he walks away and hurriedly heads down the street. Klein is now certain that he is being followed, so he ducks into a tent to escape his pursuers. But the tent he entered happens to belong to a fortune teller, and since he's the first customer to come here today, she offers to read his fortune for free. The fact that she will be using tarot cards intrigues Klein, so he decides to go along with it and asks her to show him his past, present, and future. The fortune teller asks which one he would like to see first, so Klein asks her to show him his present, and she flips one of the cards over. The card Klein gets is the Fool, card 0 of the deck. It generally represents new beginnings, but before he can get a proper explanation, he realizes the person that was following him is closing in, so he needs to get out of here. A few moments later, a man walks into the tent looking for Klein, but by then Klein is long gone. Later that day, Klein has finally made it home, and he is ready to attempt the luck enhancement ritual again to see if it can really send him home. First, he creates the talismans and wraps them around the bread to act as catalysts. He then places the bread in the four corners of the room and begins the ritual, repeating the words "celestial worthy" 4 times in a row. At first, it doesn't look like much has happened, but all of a sudden, Klein falls to the ground in pain from a severe headache. It feels like his body is being ripped apart from the inside, but once the pain finally subsides, he finds himself in the middle of an empty void with red and blue lights scattered all around. These lights begin to converge and end up summoning a woman named Aubrey Hall and a man named Alger Wilson, both of whom are very confused upon their arrival. From their perspective, Klein looks like a near-omnipotent being, so they are both very careful about how they speak to him. Aubrey asks him if this divine realm belongs to him, and Klein has no idea what she's talking about, but he has never heard of a divine realm without a shrine. But as soon as he thinks that, a shrine begins to materialize from the gray fog. Klein still isn't sure how all this works, but it looks like he has control of the gray fog and everything in this realm. Alger asks Klein who he is, and it seems like a simple question, but Klein hasn't had a chance to put much thought into it since he got here. He wonders if he is still Cho Mingru from Earth Klein's body, or has he truly become Klein Moretti? After giving it some thought, he comes to a decision and introduces himself under a new name. So he tells the two of them that they can address him as the Fool. Alger asks Klein if there's a reason he summoned both of them here, and in all honesty, this was a complete accident, but he has already committed to the persona, so he tells Alger and Aubrey that this was just an experiment. Neither of them question it, but Aubrey asks if it's alright for them to leave now since he doesn't need anything from them. Klein assures them that he will send them home if they ask him to, so they are in no danger, and Aubrey is kind of enjoying this whole experience. She has always wanted to learn more about the supernatural world, so she asks Klein if he can tell her how to become a Beyonder. Klein has no idea what a Beyonder is supposed to be, but he can't admit that, so he tells Aubrey to ask Alger because he should have an answer. Alger is still very suspicious of Klein because Aubrey sounds like she's a noble lady from Leon, and Alger was miles away at sea when he was summoned, so it would have taken a tremendous amount of power to bring both of them here. That aside, to answer Aubrey's question, he tells her that she can become a Beyonder if she joins the Church of the Evernight Goddess, or any other church for that matter. Although most people never actually rise to the level of a Beyonder, it is still possible to become one. Aubrey appreciates the information, but she would rather not give up her freedom by joining a church. So she asks Alger if there's another way for her to become a Beyonder. In that case, Alger informs her that he has 2 Sequence 9 potions in his possession. Both Aubrey and Klein are surprised to hear this, but for very different reasons, because Aubrey knows how valuable Sequence 9 potions are and because Klein has no idea what the potions are supposed to be. Aubrey asks Alger which potions he has, so he tells her he's got the Sailor and the Audience potions, the latter being able to grant her keen observation skills. Before long, the two of them come to an agreement, so Aubrey asks Klein to act as a witness to their pact, and Klein agrees, but Aubrey actually has one more request to make. She asks Klein if he can organize more gatherings like this in the future, and Alger agrees with her because he now sees Klein as an important benefactor. Klein is a little hesitant to agree to their requests, since the more he meets with them, the more likely it is that they will figure out that he's not actually all-powerful. But he also needs to gather as much information as possible about the Mystic Realm, so he ends up agreeing and tells the two of them that the meetings will be every Monday at 3 p.m. Now that that's been settled, Aubrey suggests that she and Alger should come up with codenames since they can't be using their real names. And since Klein named himself the Fool after the tarot card, Aubrey decides that she will be called Justice, and Alger decides to call himself Hanged Man. Just then, back in the real world, there's a knock at Klein's door, and the sound is disturbing his focus, so he is starting to struggle to keep the Gray Fog realm together. Because of this, he is forced to end the gathering early and send everyone back home. Once Klein is back in his body, he hides his bloody journal and shoves the gun into the stove before checking the door, and when he looks through the keyhole, he realizes it's an inspector. He has no choice but to open the door, so he ruffles his hair and pretends he just woke up from a nap as an excuse for not responding earlier. The man introduces himself as Leaner and says he is part of the old police. He then walks into the room without warning, along with his partner, Dunn Smith, and the two of them start asking Klein if he knows anything about Naya and Welsh. The two of them apparently killed themselves a day ago, which is around the same time that Klein shot himself, but he can't exactly say that to the officers. Klein decides to play dumb and acts like he has no idea what's going on, but that doesn't work out for him because Leonard already found his journal, and the final entry is clearly talking about this incident, so he asks Klein what he meant when he wrote "Everyone will die." It's going to be difficult for Klein to get himself out of this mess now, so he just admits that he doesn't remember much from that night. Dunn informs Klein that they have evidence that he visited the McGovern's manor, and a gun happened to go missing there, so Dunn asks Klein if he knows anything about that. Klein immediately tells him that he hid the gun in the stove over there, but since he's already telling the truth, he goes on to explain that he woke up this morning after failing to end his life last night, and ever since then, he hasn't been able to remember much, although he leaves out the part about him being a transmigrator. As strange as that story sounds, Dunn believes Klein because it matches up with the deductions he made. But regardless of what Dunn believes, they're still going to have to take him to a psychic to verify if what he's saying is true or not. Upon hearing this, Klein worried that his memories from his past life will be uncovered as well, but he can't refuse Dunn and Leonard's demands while he's in their custody. They take him downstairs and are about to escort Klein into a carriage, but for a moment, Dunn gets distracted by a little boy and Klein seizes the opportunity to flee. He runs down the back alley as fast as he can to get away, but all of a sudden, the world around him freezes and things begin to float, so Klein realizes there must be a Beyonder nearby. He starts running in the opposite direction, but the road rises beneath his feet to cut him off, and the entire terrain begins to shift to block him in. He manages to squeeze through a tight gap before he is completely sealed in and makes it out to the main road. There he gets into the first carriage he sees and asks the driver to take him to the port as quickly as possible. The carriage starts moving, so Klein believes he is finally safe, but to his dismay, the driver turns out to be Dunn Smith, so Klein has fallen into his trap. Moments later, Klein wakes up at his desk and the door creaks open to reveal Dunn standing at the end of the hallway. The ominous nature of his surroundings leads Klein to believe that Dunn is a beyonder. But apparently he isn't the only one here, because Klein's head is suddenly grabbed by a woman and his mind is pulled into his dreamscape. The woman begins probing Klein's mind to look through his memories, but it looks like the gray fog is keeping her from finding out about Klein's past life on Earth, so he doesn't need to worry about his secret being exposed. But the woman is still searching for answers on what happened last night, so she grabs his head and starts asking questions. First, she asks Klein what happened in the notebook of Antigonov's, but Klein genuinely doesn't know. She then asks him what he was doing at the time that Welshanaea died, and her powers force Klein to reenact the events of that night, so he pulls out the gun and shoots himself in the head. After that, Klein wakes up in the hallway and the woman leaves his mind. She informs Dunn that Klein was telling the truth about shooting himself, but she couldn't find any memories of what happened before that. For now, Dunn has learned that the Antigonos notebook is still missing, and that Klein doesn't know where it is, but that doesn't mean he isn't in danger anymore. As he is now, there's no way Klein would be able to defend himself if someone else attacked him, which is why Dunn offers him the opportunity to join his organization and become a Beyonder. The next day, Klein decides to accept Dunn's proposal, so he heads over to the Nighthawk's base of operations. There's a chance that joining them might expose his secret, but it would also grant him a lot of protection, so it's the best option for him right now. Wright asks him how he found out about this place, so Klein explains that Dunn is the one who sent him here, so Wright points him in the direction of the elevator, and a few moments later, Klein appears in the Nighthawk's reception. The first person he sees when he enters is the receptionist, Rosen, so he walks up to her and introduces himself. Dunn already informed Rosen that Klein would be coming, so she opens the secret passageway and leads him into the heart of the Nighthawk's organization. They usually don't have to do much, but in the past few days there has been a spike in Beyonder activity, so they've been busy lately. They eventually get to Dunn's office, but Rosen tells Klein he's going to have to go in on his own because she's terrified of Dunn. She can't really explain why, since she knows he's a kind person, but whenever she's around him, kind of like that feeling you get when your dad starts taking off his belt. Klein enters Dunn's office, and Dunn is glad to see that he decided to join them. He hands Klein the employment contract to sign, so from now on, he'll be a part of the Nighthawks. But to the outside world, his cover will be that of a police officer. Dunn warns Klein that as a Nighthawk, there's a risk that he may end up losing control, so he wants him to be aware of what he is getting himself into. He leads Klein into a separate room full of candles and explains this place is a memorial to all the Nighthawks who have died in battle, and each candle represents one of their fallen comrades. He goes on to explain that humans are able to gain access to great power through the pathways by drinking potions made from mystical ingredients. Klein remembers hearing Hanged Man mention something about the 22 pathways, and according to Dunn, the Nighthawks, under the Church or Evernight, have access to 4 of those pathways. The Sleepless Pathway, the Corpse Collector, the Mystery Prior, and the Seer. The Mystery Prior and Seer pathways are advantageous when it comes to mysticism, but they have terrible compatibility, and regarding the Seer pathway, they only have a Sequence 9 potion. Klein is going to need to choose which pathway he wants to follow, and there are no takebacks, so Dunn wants him to think about it carefully. He tells Klein he can go meet with Old Man Neil in the alchemy room if he needs more information on the pathways to make his decision, so he starts heading over there. While he's walking, he gives the pathways some thought, and if their names are to be taken literally, then Sleepless and Corpse Collector are out of the question for him. But now he has to figure out which is better between the Mystery Prior and the Seer pathways. He has finally arrived at Neil's lab, but when he enters, he doesn't see anyone inside. Just then, there's an explosion in the back room which forces Neil to run out, and that's when he meets Klein. Dunn told him that Klein would be coming to learn more about the right pathway choice for him, but for now, Neil asks Klein to help him organize his books. He recalls hearing that Klein is a history graduate proficient in the Phasic and Hermes scripts, so he tells him that if he continues practicing, then one day, he may be able to decipher one of these notebooks. Neil is very proud of himself because he managed to get his hands on 3 of the last surviving copies of Emperor Rosel's notebooks, and he has been working hard to decipher them ever since, but for over 100 years. No one has ever been able to figure out what these strange symbols mean, although Neil is almost certain that a few of the symbols in here represent numbers. He shows one of the pages to Klein, and as soon as Klein gets a good look at it, he realizes the words are all written in simplified Chinese. Klein can hardly believe it, but this confirms that Emperor Rosel was indeed a transmigrator just like Klein. Klein reads through the diary entries, and it's mostly memos about Rosel's daily life, but on one page, he sees Rosel mention something about how the key to potions is to internalize them, and that it's more about acting than just drawing power from the pathway. The names of the pathways are concrete guides on how to properly internalize the concepts. Unfortunately, the Emperor had to learn this the hard way, like a bad crypto investment. He got excited by the promise of power and made a hasty decision when choosing his pathway, and he ultimately came to regret it. In his diary, he wrote that if he could change things, he would have chosen either the Seer or the Marauder pathway, because those were the better options. Just then, Neil gets Klein's attention since he has been so busy reading the journal that he spaced out. Neil asks him what he has been doing, but Klein can't let him know that he understands the language of Rosel's journal, so he pretends that he was just trying to decipher it. Neil finds this hilarious since he doesn't think someone as young as Klein would have what it takes to decipher such complex symbols, but moving on, he asks Klein if he has anything in mind for his potion. And after what Klein read, he doesn't want to make the same mistake as Roselle, so he says he's going to choose the seer potion. Neil asks him if he's sure because you can only have one potion in your lifetime, but nothing is going to change Klein's mind at this point, so Neil agrees to prepare the potion for him. He pulls out a brewing box and begins mixing the ingredients for the seer potion together in there. Before long, the potion is finally ready, so Klein takes the cup, but he's a little hesitant to drink it because it smells like something you find in a poison factory. Neil assures Klein that the potion is perfectly safe to drink, but it does taste absolutely terrible, so he's just going to have to bear with it. Klein takes a deep breath and starts chugging the seer potion, and within seconds, his entire body begins to change on a molecular level. He can now see things in ways that he couldn't see before, but Neil tells him there's still more work to be done. He asks Klein to imagine an object that is common in this world, so Klein thinks of a basic top hat, but then Neil tells him to think of something that doesn't exist in this world. And Klein decides to go big on this one, so he imagines an intercontinental missile and proceeds to aura farm on it, even though no one can actually see him. By the time Klein has finally completed the ritual, he opens his eyes and his pupils have been blacked out. That dark film over his eyes signifies that his spirit vision has been activated, and in this state, Klein can not only see objects near and far, but he can also determine the health of something by looking at its aura. And on a side note, Neil might have arm cancer or something. Klein is suddenly startled because he sees a pair of eyes behind Neil, and Neil freezes up for a second, but then he brushes it off as the after effects of Klein awakening as a seer. Klein then notices a figure standing at the edge of the room, but before he can get a good look at them, they disappear and Klein suddenly gets a headache. Neil tells him that if he overuses spirit vision too much, then he will end up wearing himself out. He tells Klein he can turn it on or off by tapping his forehead, so he gives it a try, and his vision returns to normal. Neil tells Klein that he is still going to need to learn how to use divination arts, but he has made a lot of progress today, so they'll pick up where they left off next time. In the meantime, he gives Klein a set of demon hunting bullets and equipment to help if he has to go on any missions. After that, Klein goes to meet with Dunn, and Dunn is impressed by how quickly Klein has progressed. But before he officially becomes a member of Manhwa, he is going to have to work as a clerk for a few weeks, and as a gesture of goodwill, Dunn gives him a bonus of an astronomical amount, 12 pounds. In all fairness, this is the 1940s, so 12 pounds is actually a lot of money. And the first thing Klein does after receiving his bonus is buy a silver cane, so he can ore farm more efficiently. While Klein is walking down the street, a carriage pulls up next to him. Leonard tells him to get in because they got a mission. The son of a wealthy tobacco merchant was kidnapped, and they need to find him quickly, so Leonard asks Klein to use his seer powers to locate Elliot. He hands Klein a piece of Elliot's clothing to use, so he places his dowsing rod on it and activates his spirit vision. Klein now gets visions of what happened to Elliot, and once the ritual is done, the rod begins pointing in Elliot's direction. So Leonard tells the driver to follow their directions. They eventually arrive at an old spooky-looking house, and the rod is pointing inside, so they know Elliot must be in here. Klein uses his spirit vision to look through the door and spots two kidnappers playing a game of cards with Elliot tied up in the corner. Leonard tells Klein to stand back because he can handle things from here, so he blows down the door and rushes in to take them out. One of the kidnappers tries to blow Leonard's head off with a shotgun, but Leo dodges it and proceeds to combo them so hard that ragdoll physics are enabled. To be honest, that was a lot easier than he thought it would be since those guys weren't tough, but this works out a lot better for them, so he asks Klein to untie Elliot so they can get out of here. However, just as they were getting ready to leave, the two men suddenly begin to convulse, and Leo can tell that things are about to get interesting, so he tells Klein to take Elliot and go. The two men suddenly fuse into a hideous monster and lunge at Leo, but Leo is too skilled for them to keep up with, so he evades all the monster's attacks. And despite the size difference, he is able to deliver a blow that severely damages the monster. The monster goes into hiding and tries to escape using the shadows, but as it goes out into the hallway, Klein is able to track its location with his powers, so as soon as it pops out, Klein shoots it in its ugly mouth. That was a direct hit, but Klein failed to kill it in one shot, so Leo takes over and finishes it off with what I can only assume is his domain expansion. With this, the monster has been defeated and Leonard returns Elliot back to his father. So there's nothing more for Klein to do, but he suddenly gets a sharp headache as one of his memories returns to him, and he discovers that he has been in this building before. With his first mission a success, Klein returns home, and he can't wait to tell Melissa that he found a high-paying job. But when he opens the door to his apartment, he is shocked to see a winding staircase that isn't supposed to be there. Klein isn't stupid, so he immediately turns around to leave, but it's already too late because he is trapped in here, so the only thing he can do is follow the hallway. He is led to a room with his journal, flipping through pages until it eventually lands on the phrase, "Everyone will die, including me." Klein later wakes up back at his desk, and he believes the visions he just had mean that there's a clue regarding the whereabouts of Antigonos' notebook in that house the kidnappers used. Following the successful rescue, Captain Dunn went to ingratiate the guy who was following the main man from days earlier. Nightmare, Captain Dunn said, and nightmares he got. The poor bastard never stood a chance. Consequently, we found out that the Antigonos family notebook had entered the market thanks to the secret order, but they eventually lost track of it, hence why they are now following Klein as well. Speaking about the devil, Klein got a clue about the notebook. Inside the room that was foreshadowed earlier, there was a maggot-infested corpse, and according to Klein, the notebook was in that room. Leonard concludes that the child kidnappers went crazy due to being this close to the notebook, which of course is not here. Likewise, Ray Bieber, the son of the corpse getting feasted on by maggots, is also missing. In other words, he is the target they are looking for. Thus, they get a selfie of his ugly mug and let Calvin Klein do his thing. However, unlike the last time, the cane goes rogue and starts flying across the room before eventually turning off the hand that guides it. Luckily, Captain Dunn was standing beside the main man. Otherwise, he'd been turned to shish kebab, and the series ended right there. According to him, divination was disturbed by some powerful force, so it can't be helped. Captain Dunn called it a day. The next morning, Agent Dunn gave the rookie an artifact that could enhance the divination skill. The item is considered a grade 2 sealed artifact, and as you expect, these artifacts are considered dangerous, so they are sealed behind chained gates. Why they let a newbie, and not alone a guy with brain damage due to a bullet to the head, participate in this? Well, according to Dunn, because Klein touched it. And we're not talking about the div, we're talking about the notebook. But if it's anything worth saying, it's that the Holy Cathedral members who were summoned to assist in the search agree with the sentiment that bringing in a rookie seeker with no prior combat experience is a bad idea. Inside the office, Captain Dunn is taken aback that the cathedral allowed the use of 2-049, the familiar of the Antigonus family, to find Ray Bieber. 2-049 would track down Bieber for them if he were a real Antigonus descendant. Therefore, the artifact overseer asked to waste no more time and for the room to start jorking it. Yep, this motion without lotion is very crucial for the safety of everyone in the room. However, Klein does not buy it, but joins in on the fun thanks to good old peer pressure tactics. Once he started jorking it as well, the box jumped all over the place and landed on the floor. Turns out there was a jack in the box, pun intended. Immediately, the little demon locked eyes on our boy, putting him under his spell. Klein couldn't move, but Leonard could. He set our boy free from the puppet's demonic wreaths. Naturally, a young lad from China didn't want anything to do with that she, so he ran behind his captain only for his captain to fall under the puppet's spell as he was explaining that among all the demons, 2-049 was the least murderous. As further explained by the cathedral members, the puppet randomly controls 1 to 2 people within 5 meters. To break the control, one just wakes the victim up via external force. Hearing this, Klein asked the smart question of what if the little rascal controlled all 5 people? The men Black answered, that's impossible, which in this line of work would call it famous last words. Anyhows, the game of cat and mouse ended once they threw Bieber's coat and the demon went feral for it. Seeing this, the lads went to hunt a character named after an A-list douchebag. Elsewhere, we see a Lovecraftian ritual being done with Ray in the middle of it. The notebook took hold of Ray mentally and physically, it went up his guts and merged with him to produce a monstrosity. The clown who gave Klein an invite to the circus in the first episode saw the ritual end. He arrived late and was disappointed that he couldn't take the notebook, but his hopes went up once he heard the home team closing in. Once they exited their whips, Klein was asked to do divination to determine if the area was safe. Using his new artifact, Klein found out they were doomed. The horses said, I ain't sticking around to find out, and left the boy to fend for themselves. Pistols out, I can tell you this monstrosity didn't give a damn. It charged the homeboys, ignoring the pain. Thus, Cap and Vice Cap jumped him back, they spat some poems to make him sleepy, but it didn't work. This big boy is yap immune. Consequently, they asked the only woman on the team to find the ugly bastard's weakness so they could put him to sleep. Dally figured she needs 3 seconds to control it, so it's up to the boys to hold it down while she Professor exits Peanut Brain. Captain Dunn heard and went to work. He ordered Leonard to rush the big meatball while he used his magic long fingers to chain it down. If anything I dislike about this series so far is the way they illustrated the fingers. They look way too starched from certain angles. Speaking about stretched, the notebook stretched out the monster thin to impale everyone present. Although the church men managed to fend it off, the monster still landed a critical hit, i.e., it knocked down the demon's box. One was ordered to stay back and watch the jack in the box while went to show this Lovecraftian monster how they do it in London. But alas, he couldn't shot him, the sword broke, and the man fell from the mere aura of the monster, he didn't surrender. The guy joined efforts in restraining the monster's movement. Looking from afar, Klein was a bit overwhelmed by the monster pressure, but thanks to his gray mist exposure, his pressure tolerance was higher, and he could move and cast spells to calm the beast for a moment, long enough for Dally to destroy the monster and show off the animator's skill. I mean, there was no reason to show her step on the water puddle, but what a beautiful way to flex their skills. Moving on, the notebook lying on the ground started whispering to our boy as if he were Frodo on a mission. And just like the classic story, a deranged clown appeared from the shadows to claim his precious. However, in this story, they got guns, and every move the clown tried to pull was met with lead and copper. He only survived due to being a level 7 beyonder. The clown weaved and weaved everything the home team threw at him. Even Leonard, who had been only farming aura and style points so far, wasn't a match for the clown's aura. That straight block into grab into explosion spell combo was nasty. Not to mention the following tree branch flip, the man is a menace. However, in the show, there can only be one OG clown, and it belongs to the man with the full title. Klein deduced that the clown was predicting the homeboy's action using some sort of foresight skill, so he opted to start shooting randomly, which actually worked. Yet the clown had another skill up his sleeve. He dodged Leonard's lame-ass poem and then damage-transferred his gut wounds to his arm before pulling out a whip from thin air to fend off the side characters, opening a way to the main man. Inches away, the boys managed to stop the madman, only to find it was another clone jutsu. The real clown was standing behind them all that time, waiting for the perfect moment to snap his fingers and set 2 to 049. Before anyone could realize, the little demon had expanded his domain, and they were all now under his control. As said earlier, it's impossible to control all 5. Those were famous last words. Luckily, they had a client. The rookie started recalling the condition to break the spell, external force, over and over, till the gray mist popped up in his mind. Immortal, worthy of heaven and earth for blessing. Majestic, worth of heaven and earth for blessing. Vulnerable, worthy of heaven and earth for blessing. Celestial, worthy of heaven and earth for blessing. Klein muttered those enchantments and was able to send his soul to the gray mist domain. Inside, he realized that the clown aimed for the little demon because he knew it could trap all of them due to the notebook's empowerment attribute. After taking a breather, Klein made a divination to see if going back to his body was safe, which turned out to be the case. However, once back, he found the puppet domain still up and the clown waiting for him with a proposal. Give him the notebook and he will lift the puppet's control. Also, to show sincerity, the clown gave away the answer to the Seer Pathway Sequence 8, for he was a former Seer as well. Considering the situation, Klein wondered whether it was true or not, since the clown, being a former level 7 Seer, should be able to know his current state. The only reasonable answer was that the gray mist had affected the divination results, hence why the clown thought he got our boy right where he wanted. He even tried to nudge him further by mentioning how no one was looking, all the guys were under a trance. Unbeknownst to him, Lenny Boy was still in it to win it. The negotiations ended once the clown gave the fool the secret to Pathy 8. He then tried to play some sadistic game by slowly bringing his wooden tip to the main man's face, but the latter was not gonna be caught lacking. He grabbed that wood with a firm fist, startling the flamboyant clown and luring him to the puppet's domain where only he could move. After rendering him unable to move, Klein took his sweet time to aim and shoot. Sadly for the clown, our boy got poo-poo aim. It took him 2 bullets to end it, one to the Adam's apple and one to the noggin. Understandably, the clown was pissed, 2 shots to kill, and one landed in the throat. He got up and started talking gibberish about some Hornices, and then passed away. The little demon saw that Shia and decided to deactivate, for he doesn't want any beef with a YN that doesn't know how to aim. Following this, Lenny tried to save face by claiming he wanted to help, but didn't after seeing how our boy stood on business, and then tried to glaze him by saying how special he was to not fall under the puppet control, ending the interaction by whispering right into Klein's earlobe that he too is special. And let me just say, the animation team did not need to make his lips look juicy for that frame. Moving to a wider frame, we saw the notebook get sealed in the chain chamber. Dunn complimented the rookie's performance, telling him that after this mention of the Holy Cathedral, he will officially become a member of the Men in Black. While heading back to the office, Klein noticed the clown's body and paused in his place for a moment. The captain, being a good captain, felt the moment was weighing down on his boy and went to comfort him. Captain Dunn told him how this one act saved dozens, if not hundreds, of innocent people. To put it short, he was a hero. Hearing this, Klein breathed a breath of relief and switched his attention to another matter, unlocking Seer Sequence 8. Later, the cathedral members bid their farewells to the comrades, but not before complimenting Klein and saying how he has a bright future in front of him. Klein tried to downplay his feats, but Leonard was there to glaze him tenfold, saying how smart he was to lure the clown and finish him with one shot, which low-key icked the main man. Deep down, he knows he did the clown dirty with a shot to the throat. Suddenly, Klein felt an orb loosen within his soul domain. Something had boosted his ability to absorb it. Determined to find answers, the MC figured the best place to start asking is back at Hoy University, where the OG Klein studied. Dr. Isaac Eggers is a teacher of history and apparently one of OG Klein's favorite mentors. Hence, it was a no-brainer to ask him about this Hornices he keeps getting whispers of. The doc admits he had heard of it, along with the Antigonus family, but doesn't know what they are. He brushed the names off to be a case of similar words crisscrossing. Understandable, Klein told him before heading to the door. At the door, Dr. Eggs asked if his former student was enjoying his work as a security person for old artifacts, to which the former said, yup. Doc then told him to stay safe. This is a dangerous line of work that attracts lots of thieves. Klein said, bet. And then the two bid him farewell. After leaving, Doc Egg contemplated the names given and questions asked. Conveniently, a cloud covered the sun as the new character summoned a skeleton monster from his shadow while looking menacingly. And the dark vibes continue with the scene of a man being tutored for failing to acquire the Antigonus family notebook. Apparently, this guy was the bastard behind Bieber turning into a monster. He had a simple and clear mission. Get the notebook, deliver the notebook to the leader, but the little fella decided to be a big man and do some experiments with the book, which evidently failed thanks to Klein and the boys' interference. Thus, to atone for his failure, the loser had to bite his pinky off. The nine-fingered man believes that Klein has read what's in the notebook and figured out its hidden secrets. Therefore, he promised not only to get the book, but also the secrets out of Klein. Now, to raise the mood back up, old Neil called Klein to his office to teach him some ritual magic. For some reason, whenever I see this old man, I feel good. He's like a nerdy version of Uncle Iroh. For example, This lesson is about how to beseech the help of a greater deity so they can harness their power. First, Old Man Neil explained that every ritual needs a set of items and a corresponding incantation to request help. He then started to demonstrate it as he explained that when putting up a wall of spirit, that the most important rule in mysticism of this kind is never to communicate with an unknown power. The whole setup looked cool and badass until the old man started begging the goddess for a $30 payment. Understandably, a young student like Clam was disappointed, yet he still had the decency to go along with the old man to find out how the goddess would send him the money, and then the funniest shit happened. The dude found a wallet beside the street as they were walking around the city. While the old man was pleased his prayer was answered this swiftly, the young man caught a second-hand embarrassment of his mentor's laying lesson. Then, not a second later, a carriage appeared and the man sitting in it thanked Neil for finding his wallet. While the old man conversed with the gentleman in the carriage, Klein giggled in slints anticipating the fall of his mentor once the latter gave back the wallet. However, to his surprise, the man decided to reward Neil for being honest. And his reward, you ask? $30, giving poor bastards like myself and others around the world false hope that money falls from the trees. You just have to pray harder for it. The lesson then finished with some words of encouragement and caution. Although magic is great, it should always be used with morals. For the Nighthawk's motto, you can act as you wish, but do no harm. Hearing the motto, Klein started thinking about the words he read in the Emperor's diary about acting and digesting being the key to achieving greater power. Cleven's train of thought then gets cut short when a young lady approached the main man offering him a fortune reading. Inside the shop, Klein learned that although going home now is impossible, the possibility of going later in the future is possible, giving the main man the encouragement he needed to push harder and get stronger. Pleased by the results, Klein paid with what I would like to think was the money his mentor begged the goddess. While checking the cash, the guy started coughing, so curious Klein activated his mystic eyes and saw that the man was sick and suggested he go and see a doctor early before his condition worsens. When asked if he was a doctor, our boy said, "Nah, those guys are losers," and then proceeded to flex his bling, revealing that he's a fellow seer as well, and he came here to join this little club of theirs. Seeing his skill from earlier, the clerk mentioned how the headmaster of their club had foresaw that a great seer would join the shop today. Intrigued, Klein went to take a peek at the guy's class. He was teaching mirror divination, and they all seemed oak aura wise, but there was still something off. A little girl then ran beside Klein with a gift in hand. He sensed a curse, but then brushed it off as a mere illusion, and with that, behind Klein was ready to see Mr. Vincent. After some chit-chat and glazing, Vincent offered to read Klein's fortune. He started giving some vague bullshit fortune tellers usually used, like how there are two personalities in you clashing, you having a deep desire you can't attain. The Hocus Pocus master then concluded that there will be a family gathering soon, and it will be very important for the MC. Klein wondered what that would mean and wanted to ask more questions. However, the season has entered and the next one he would have to pay, and he really didn't want to pay since a reading costs as much as his salary. Hence, the broke boy thanked him for the free reading and went on his way. Back home, Klein got to work on cooking some new tech. The fool that doesn't belong to this era. The mysterious ruler above the gray mist. The king of yellow and black who wields good luck is a prayer made to him. If this simplified prayer works, Klein might be able to further improve it, allowing him to eventually return home. Klein's work then got cut short by a knock at the door. He burned the paper before opening it to see his sister playing with her newest toy invention. After enjoying the moment with his sister, Big Brother checked his pocket watch. He was running late for work. Before leaving, Melissa told him about a birthday party her friend was holding and she wished he'd be there with her elder brother. Immediately, Klein recalled the words of the seer about a family gathering and decided to go after work. Now in the Fool's castle, the Fool sat down with the Hanged Man and Justice. He used his new seer powers to see the power of his subordinates and was amazed by the contrast between Alger and Audrey. While the former gave off the aura of a raging ocean, strong and vicious, the latter felt like a serene lac, peaceful and graceful. The Fool congratulated Miss Justice for becoming a Beyonder. The baddie thanked him and the Hanged Man as well as revealed that she chose the spectator pathway. Klein then saw the spiritual representation of their constellation. The particular scene was superb sound effects-wise. I highly recommend you visit it. That said, let's continue with the mysticism as we see the Fool's constellation symbol is the pupilless eye that represents secrecy. Also, the contorted lines under the oval-shaped eye represent change. In short, the main man has two constellations intertwined, which is weird, and to make it weirder, they both seem to be missing a part. The info dump mysticism session concluded after the Fool permitted his underlings to speak freely. This opened the way for Audrey to ask more questions, 3 to be precise, and she is willing to pay for the information. Yep, here's more info dump your way. The spectator pathway is, as it says, for spectators. The people who take this path are tasked to be as objective as they can, don't take sides or action. Their only job is to watch in complete neutrality so they can collect clues needed to find the truth. Alger further explained, to get stronger, you must master the power of potions within your constellation, i.e. the orbs we saw earlier in Klein's domain. Hearing this, Klein interjected to correct Alger, saying it's not in mastering, but in digesting. It's not finding, but in acting. A potion name is not just a symbol, but also an image, i.e. the constellational representation. Furthermore, digestion is the key. Hearing this new kind of information, Aldr was shook. He didn't realize the lore got patched. Hence, the hanged man thanked his lord, saying it was as precious as his life for how important it was. Audrey also thanked him and proceeded with the next question. What happens if an animal drank a Sequence 9 potion? Naturally, the boys were taken aback. Turns out, Susie, her dog, consumed the potion when she was not looking. Aldr explained that if the animal didn't die, then it would become an exceptional creature. Finally, the last question was about what to do to reform a nation, how to pick new leaders to help the nation. The fool found this matter quite simple, so he answered it himself, advising Audrey to hold a contest to gauge the talent of the people. The ones who pass should be fit for their role. Further adding, not only nobles but also commoners should participate in this high-level exam, dubbing it the world's exam. Miss Justice thanked her wise leader and asked if he needed anything of them, to which the fool concurred. He asked her to gather the old emperor's diaries hidden in her capital. Shocked, Aldr wondered how the fool knew about their true nature since no one had yet discovered the cipher in the emperor's papers. Moving on, Clan gave the duo a homework assignment to do every Sunday. They must set up a ritualistic prayer and pray for good dreams. If they succeed, they can adjust it minimally for the next time. Audrey was gleeful at the prospect of studying new mystic tech. She hurriedly asked for initiation, the one Klein wrote earlier about the fool not belonging and the Yellow King. Upon hearing the incantation, Aldr started to tremble. He had to hold his hand down to stay cool, for creating a new threefold honorific on par with the 7 orthodox beings is unheard of. At that moment, the cautious Aldr wholeheartedly believed that if the ritual magic truly pointed to him, then he must be an ancient godlike figure. And with that aura bomb setting off, the meeting concluded, and everyone's spirit was sent back to the mortal realm. Back in his meat sack, Klein went with his siblings to the birthday girl's party, who happens to be the redhead from the Seer Club. Elizabeth was also there, and she remembered our dashing boy and gave him a subtle nod. Klein noted within himself having friends obsessed with the occult can be dangerous. Suddenly, the man of the hour felt something was off in that house. Inside, everyone was having a good old time, including Klein, who was busy filling his dish at the buffet. Elizabeth approached him to let him know that his secret of being a seer is safe with her, before excusing herself with a sweet smile on their face. Little sister Melissa saw her friend from afar acting all cutesy and shit, so she didn't waste time to make her big brother know that Eli is 16. And just like all occult-obsessed 16-year-olds, the girls went upstairs to try out the magical mirror they got from Vincent, who was watching them from the other side in the store, laughing that his plan is going perfectly. Klein immediately sensed something was off when the girls started incanting, so he used his artifact to determine the gravity of the situation. The divination came out as shit is about to go down, son. Realizing there was no time to call for backup, Klein had to act. He came up with the idea of borrowing the Evernight goddess's power. Luckily, all the items he needed were inside the girl's room. Hence, he used nocturnal slumber to restrain the possessed girl for a minute to set up the prayer ritual. Although it succeeded, the power he could control wasn't enough in comparison to the lunatic praying for his master on the other side. Immediately, Klein whipped out his pistol because when magic fails, lead and copper win. Alas, the lad doesn't know how to aim. His shot doesn't land and gets pinned down by the demonic girl controlled by the lunatic who is demanding to know the secrets of the notebook and the sudden rise of power in Klein. In all honesty, it found this whole sequence kinda dumb, like how is a man getting choked out supposed to answer? Luckily, homegirl Audrey came in clutch with a prayer to the fool, allowing Klein to regain consciousness and somehow disorient the opponents long enough for our boy to get back to his feet. The lunatic, though, hasn't given up and willingly tears his arm off as an offering to the true god. He serves to give him power to defeat this black lamb. Likewise, Klein uses the power of his goddess to free the redhead girl from the artifact's control, ultimately saving the day and the little girls. After the dust settled, Klein credited this victory to Miss Justice's prayer, which guided him through the gray mist. Seeing how trouble follows those with power, Klein decided to keep his seer abilities a secret from his siblings. Might the ignorance be a blessing? On the other end, the Lord's Oracle's knowledge of his underling's failure was a curse on him that led to Vincent's death. Klein and Captain Dunn had to check the store soon after and found Vincent dead. They figured he was a member of the Creator cult, and they killed him for his failure. Then we saw a feather floating around, and the cam zoomed in on Dunn's eyes, who seemed under a genjutsu. Inside it, Captain Dunn saw the face of the true Creator, and let me tell you, it wasn't a pleasant one. Luckily, there was an extra scene at the end with the beautiful Aubrey getting ready for a party. While messing around with her dog, Susie said, "Dizzy." Yep, the golden retriever talked, and I couldn't feel more jealous. A talking retriever. I wish. On the other end, a woman was giving a very dramatic opera performance. It sounded okay. In all honesty, opera was never my cup of tea, even though there was a time in my life when I pretended to listen to it to look smart and be different. Instead, I came off as a jackass, I bet. The same couldn't be said for the main man, Klein, who sat there among the pretentious aristocrats and looked like a distinguished gentleman. As the opera performance was nearing its ending, a guy came out to greet the crowd. From afar, his aura looked like the main man for a second. I thought we were in the Utopia arc. But once the camera zoomed in, it was clear that he was just another pretty guy. Speaking of distinguished gentlemen, Captain Dunn joined in. He was still suffering from the exposure to the hangman's spiritual shock at the Seer Club. Klein asked if it's okay for him to be active, to which the former confirmed and then proceeded to share info about what happened so far. Apparently, Dally had left the city for another mission, but not before questioning Vincent in a dream state. Yup, turns out the guy still had little life in him, and so they took him in and did the whole nightmare questioning thing. But since the lad was hanging to life by a thread, he couldn't handle the questioning and died. But they learned that the Order was worshipping the true creator. The conversation was cut short by a flashback to a week earlier, when Klein had a customer at the Seer Club. The lady was asking him for a divination to learn the whereabouts of her husband, who wasn't on board the boat he was shipped on. Incidentally, the Nighthawks were investigating the boat, for there was a lot of death on board. Aside from the woman's fiancé, Tris, the opera guide, survived the boat ride. He actually was the person who saved her husband when they were sailing. To put it short, he looked nice and had a nice reputation around him. However, he didn't look nice at the main man as he was entering his caravan. He had that "I'm a bad guy" look in his eyes. Unlike the survivor who didn't look nice but was nice to the main character upon learning our boy was the one who divined his safe return. Klein noticed the guy's 1,000-yard stare and asked him what was on his mind. Then, through a masterful transition to the Seer Club, we saw the man telling Klein about a recurring nightmare he had been having ever since the boat incident. Klein put the guy to sleep and entered his psyche to look into that incident, and what he found was horrifying. A man threw a baby off the deck and then jumped off the board. The guide ran to save him since he was the last surviving barbarian and needed to ask him why they suddenly committed such atrocities for no reason. Klein interjected with his own questioning and concluded there must have been a mastermind behind these actions. The cam then panned behind him to reveal a shadowy figure whispering. The dream state glitched to a throne room where the whispers of Hornesis echoed louder and louder until Klein snapped out of it. Klein wondered why he was being haunted by these whispers and whether they were the temptations of an evil deity. However, one thing was for sure: the palace held clues about his transmigration. For now, he just hoped that Professor Isk found any info on his side. Klein's chain of thought was cut short by the cap's knock. Klein informed Captain Dunn that the tragedy's creator was present. He manipulated all survivors into accepting his new identity. In other words, Tris, the hero, is the killer. Captain Dunn whipped out his pipe, for this is a tricky situation to handle. Tris is a recognized hero and as such can't be convicted based on dream revelations alone. They need solid real-world proof. To get that, they'll need the help of mandated punishers and the machinery hive mind. Yet missionaries, what they truly need for this man is a freak. Turns out, he has been partying all night with the victim's fam. Yup, he pushes husbands to kill each other and then awakens in their widow's arms. In other words, he didn't invest in free real estate. He created the estate, a level 8 instigator performance right there. Yet Tris isn't satisfied with his sequence level and demands a level up. The lady who visited him accepted on the condition that he complete one more task before handing the level 7 sequence formula. She told him that he would be alone in this task since the Nighthawks are now aware of his actions. Elsewhere, Old Man Neil and Klein are going to the market to buy some material to make talismans for Klein's siblings. Neil led the young man to a secret passage leading to Tinjin's underground market. Judging by the massive size of the market, one wonders how this is considered a kept secret from the masses. Like they have their own police force called the Punishers, as well as their own crazy homeless people, like this guy who crazy spiritual presence and can sense others' great presence. Klein was spooked how this random homeless guy could have sensed that he had died before, i.e. got isekai'd. What I'm trying to say is that the city has all these colorful characters, and it's still insinuated to be a hidden market. The market vendors are just ordinary people trying to get by on a shoestring, passing off their goods as special artifacts. But lads like Klein could see the goods' true value and power. Neil explains that even though these vendors can't make true talismans, they still can acquire one by purchasing 2 prototypes and processing them into the real deal themselves. Naturally, Klein was underwhelmed by their high prices considering they are fake. Suddenly, Klein spotted Tris, so he tapped Neil on the shoulder to put their shopping spree on hold and follow him. Klein noticed another person tailing his target. Neil told him that he was a Punisher member. And just like the name sounds, Punishers are not good at stealth missions. Tris made a run for it as soon as he had the higher ground. While on the run, he pushed a guy down a bridge, but luckily for him, our boy was on the ground chasing and saved him by a cart thanks to his fast thinking. While Tris saved himself thanks to his fast feet, a man did a clean 360 turn worthy of an NBA finalist. I'm saying Neo dodged the bullets, but Tris broke their ankles, pure Parker machine. Sadly, he lost his hat while flying all over, which low-key took a bit off his aura, but still, he did escape and caught 2 bodies above ground while doing so, and that's what is important. Captain Dunn asked Klein to ride with him in the caravan as they tried to pinpoint Tris' location via divination on the hat. Straight left, right, the home team was making their way into the Demonist Sect's hideout. Demonist Sect is an evil organization that spreads disasters, and their god is a hidden entity called the Primordial Demoness. Also, their upper echelon is all female. After reaching the hideout, Captain Dunn ordered Klein to stay out while they raided the building to catch Tris. The homies went in and the baddies went out. One chick with a well-drawn rack on her pumped into our boy. Recognizing she is hot as hell, Klein offered to help her, but she declined, apologized, and left like all the baddies that leave me once I scroll down. But let's not linger on my maidenless life, for Captain Dunn also didn't find his catch. Nighthawk's orb put flyers all over the city and searched for days but didn't find any trace of Triss. During this time, Klein collected his salary and was gleeful upon learning he had received a raise as well as become an official member of the Nighthawks, thanks to his efforts so far. Consequently, Klein was put into intensive training. He learned magic at night and practiced martial arts by day, likening this experience to military training. Also, he kept going to the Seer Club to do some light work, which helped in the potion digestion process. Add to that, the Tarot Club meeting with his loyal subordinates. Klein had no time to slack, but still he was thankful for these peaceful, busy days. Until a pretty boy with lashes longer than my hair came knocking at his door. Apparently, during Klein's peaceful days, deaths in Tinjin's city had quintupled. Thus, the police put the Nighthawks, the mandated punishers, and the machinery hive mind on the job to figure out what in the true creator name is going on. Poisoning, drowning being lit on fire, and many more cases of death have been recorded. The only common thing between them is that the victims were low-class workers and vagrants. After further divination, Klein found out that before the victim's life went to shit, someone had patted their back. The other team confirmed it to be the case, saying on their end, a young woman's hand had appeared every time, even behind natural death cases. Klein listened and analyzed carefully the clues they had to come up with a conclusion in his head. But Leonard saw this and was like, hell nah, your bread is my bread, and went ahead to tell the supervisor that Klein and him, emphasis on the him, came up with a theory they liked to share, and then proceeded to put Klein in the spotlight, much to his dismay. Klein concluded that whether it was the doing of a Beyonder or not, all the victims were fated to die soon. That said, they died sooner than expected since their remaining life expectancy was forcibly taken from them. In other words, they are dealing with a life theft case. The thieves aim to use these stolen lives to summon an evil deity, a demon, or prepare some horrific, large-scale curse. Either way, they are done. End conclusion. Leonard gave our boy a friendly pat and complimented their teamwork, saying the wheel of history begins to turn inexorably when two protagonists collide. Taken aback by this shameless behavior, Klein asks his homeboy why he thinks he is part of the main character team, to which the latter answers, "We both have secrets, and as long as your actions don't endanger the Nighthawks, I will consider you a comrade, and I hope you think of me the same way." Anyways, using one of the victim's belongings, Klein managed to find the witch's general direction, and from there the lads mapped out the target's location and concluded the killer must be in the southern industrial zone. In front of the hideout, Captain Dunn makes a plan to put the witch in a dream state, allowing Leonard and the other guy to make follow-up attacks, while Klein is told to stand still. Once the nightmare started, the witch stood on business, grabbed a bottle to conceal herself, and looked for intruders. She ambushed one guy with multiple casts of wrath and managed to land a solid stab from behind, only to discover it was a fake. Leonard then did his thing with the flowers and landed a kick on the chick, which sent her crashing into a wall, which in turn caved in to reveal a big hand trying to catch her. The witch saw that shit and was like, F this, I'm out, before cutting her hand to wake herself up. Like always, when magic fails, bullets speak. The lads start blasting while Klein watches them miss every shot against this level 7 sequence Beyonder. Unlike the clown from before who tanked the bullet and transferred the damage, this user blocked the bullets with a crystal spell and used the broken pieces to attack. Back in the castle, the witch started praying for the demoness statue to unlock more juice and free the wrath trapped under it. The Orth are vengeful souls that can be dealt with by lead and steel. One wrath, though, managed to make contact with Dunn and freeze his body down to his internals. Something I can't explain happened, and Dunn was able to destroy the ice. Swear to God, every mission Dunn gets touched by a higher, he's collecting spiritual STDs as if they were Pokemon. Anyways, one of the boys manages to break into the house only to be met with a flying carpet. Not wanting to be soloed by a furniture piece, the lad does this cool-ass electric spell to break free and shoot the carpet. Surprisingly, it bled. Behind it stood the witch with the demoness statue. She blasted him with some Conquer Hockey-type power, but the man stood his ground and unleashed his own Conquer Hockey to protect himself. With the man on the ground, the witch saw an opening to get out, where Leonard is. From behind, she hit him with a black flower that Lenny Boy blocked with his hand. Yet it didn't matter, for the flower was cursed infused. Leonard gave chase to the invisible witch, who thought her curse had set in his body, and now it is too late for him to act. Luckily, Leonard is that guy. He broke off his nail and wrapped the flower thing around it before throwing it away as the witch was about to activate the curse, setting his body ablaze. Thinking she killed him, she bid the home team farewell and hopped off a bridge. Inside the house, the team stood by Klein as he restored the mirror with a spell to see the last image stored in it, revealing that the woman from the building raid was her. The group then connected the points together on why they didn't find Triss in the building the other day and concluded that Triss has become a woman. Captain Dunn notes that it makes sense why he did it. For the upper echelon of the demoness sect is all women. Then it dawns on him, many females in the Diddy sect were once males. Yup, in late Uncle Ben's words, with great power comes great sacrifice, or small, depending on their willy sizes, honestly. Now aboard a train, Triss, or rather Trissy, of the Diddy sect is seen enjoying the benefit of becoming a hot woman. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next part.